More news tonight. Israeli and Palestinian leaders are holding a new round of direct talks. The main issue being discussed is whether a current freeze on Israeli settlement building in the West Bank will be extended. Palestinian President Abbas has threatened to walk out on the negotiations if construction continues. Let's talk about this now to Omar Barghouti. He's an activist from the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. Thanks for being on the line with us. It's appreciated tonight. This 10-month Israeli moratorium on the settlement building is due, as we know, to end in 2 weeks' time. How likely are the sides to reach an agreement on this before that moratorium expires?
We should not fall into the Israeli propaganda trap of discussing such micro issues, minor issues, as freezing this or that. The entire settlement, colonial settlement enterprise, is illegal according to international law. All the settlements have to be removed according to international law. This points to the main problem with these so-called negotiations, and I call them negations, not negotiations, because they negate Palestinian rights, they negate human rights in general, and they negate the reference to international law. And therefore, these talks have no chance of success. The Israeli side is a belligerent occupier and an apartheid system that's denying a majority of the Palestinians, the refugees, the right to return to their homes. The Palestinian side is too weak and lacks democratic mandate, not to mention vision and other things. So there is no chance for these talks to succeed.
But are you properly represented as well yourselves, looking at your own soil, the Hamas leadership opposing these negotiations before you even start? Can you really talk about any meaningful peace process anyway when Palestinians are so divided?
Well, it's not about Palestinian division, and it's not just about Hamas. The entire Palestinian civil society largely opposes these so-called negotiations because it sees absolutely nothing to be gained. Israel is already using those sham talks to ask the Europeans to upgrade links with Israel and asking for benefits from the US. So Israel is using it to cover up its ongoing siege of Gaza, its ongoing colonization as we speak. So what are they discussing if Israel is grabbing more and more land while so-called negotiations are continuing? So it's not about Hamas, it's not about a split among the Palestinians. On this issue, Palestinian civil society is very united against so-called negotiations on no basis of international law.
Is there any backing tonight, personally, then, for Palestinian President Abbas?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
Is there any backing personally for you, for instance, tonight for President Abbas? He's sitting around that negotiating table. Are you saying that it's pointless in being there?
He should not have been there to start with. He has no mandate to be there. He cannot speak on our behalf. If he signs a surrender agreement, as Israel and the US wish him to do, it won't be worth the ink it was written in because the Palestinian side is not representative. He has no democratic mandate to speak on our behalf or to concede any of our basic rights. Palestinians have 3 basic rights: ending the occupation, ending the system of racial discrimination or apartheid within Israel, and most importantly, the right of return for the Palestinian refugees. This is the crux of the question of Palestine.
I think I kind of know what your answer is going to be to the next question. I'm looking at Hillary Clinton on the screen there, on the pictures over your shoulder. But the US, of course, is mediating very heavily in these talks. They put a lot of effort into it. But taking into account their pro-Israeli policies, do you think they can really be considered impartial peace brokers at the end of the day?
Absolutely not. Very few Palestinians, Arabs, or even conscientious persons in the West view the US as a neutral bystander. The US is the main sponsor of Israeli occupation and apartheid, the main funder, the main protector at the UN, diplomatically, politically, financially. It's the main supporter of Israel. So it's entirely complicit. It's a partner in crime. The US administration is a partner in crime. It cannot be an independent or neutral referee. If the US wants to be a referee, it has to stick by international law and impose on Israel respect for international law. And this is the key issue that's missing in this whole formula: resistance to Israel's belligerence, occupation and apartheid. Without international pressure, as in the boycott, divestment and sanctions movement, there is no chance of compelling Israel to respect Palestinian rights or international law.
Omar Barghouti from the Palestinian campaign for the academic and cultural boycott of Israel. Thanks for being on the line with us tonight from Ramallah. It's appreciated.